Shalom, guys, in Yhwh, the Messiah. Hope you're all well in Yahweh's grace. Now I just want to talk to you tonight about legalism. What is legalism? Now, if you worship a God that has no requirements to meet with him, what kind of a God would that be? Of course you don't, because what you do is you listen to your minister, and the minister listens to whoever is in authority, and they get specific holy days from whoever is in authority that knows about when to have Easter, when the full moon is after the vernal equinox. Now, these ministers don't know that, how to do that themselves, so they have to ask someone in authority, who are unconverted rabbis, usually. And that's how we get today's Christian calendar. The rest of the calendar is fixed. Now, remember, one of the great sins in Deuteronomy is the keeping of times. Now, this is a set timekeeping, set days, and whereby you work at a certain time and hour, and you observe certain things in that time and hour that obviously don't please the true God, and that's called observing times. It's a form of witchcraft. Now, today, the Christian church, as I just mentioned, relies on a different authority to determine when Easter is, but the rest of the holy days are fixed. For instance, Christmas and the Sabbath is a 7-day cycle we call Sunday, Day of the Sun, and that's the day that the pagans love to worship their sun god, and that stems from one of the gods beginning with, I think it's Ra from Egypt, that they used to worship. And all the rest of the days are, of course, mentioned after the Egyptian astrological system, which also has a set of timekeeping which relate to different gods of the cosmos and are related to idols that were set up by these emperors and empires to represent the paganism that they were involved in, and they had blood sacrifices to them and prayers to them, as they do now in a certain church. They actually set their offerings before the idol and start enchanting certain prayers. It's a form of witchcraft, and then they come out of it and they say that they're Christians. Now, this was what the First Reformation was about, or sorry, should I say the last Reformation was about. A bunch of priests coming out of that movement saying, in no way or account are we commanded to do that in the Bible, because at that time obviously they had what was known as the printing press, which originated, of course, in Northern Europe and spread throughout Europe, whereby we could have the first printed and properly translated Bible, English Bible, which was the 1611 King James, and before that it was, I think it was the 1563 Geneva Bible. Now, going back to this times thing and legalism, how it's connected with legalism. Now, if you've got a boss at work, and your boss is legally, of course, required to tell you your working hours, unless it would be a complete joke, because, well, I guess it's called flexi time today, which I've been involved in, and I've had the great pleasure in working when I want, as long as I do put my hours in. But usually your boss tells you when to come in and what you'll be involved doing. Now, it's the same with the church today, and especially, of course, with the Catholic Church. But let's take a normal Baptist church, for instance. So the pastor says we're having a meeting at such and such a time. He gives the intimations, and you must be there, remember, at that specific time to do what they're involved doing at that specific time, whether it's speaking on a subject or speaking against outdoor preaching, for instance. I remember the last church I went to were very against people that went out and spoke to Jesus Christ, or shared the gospel with people. They were very much against that leadership, and I think it turned out that some of that leadership were Masons, and they actually set up what was called home groups, where some of the people at these home groups indulged in fleshly things. Now, going back to the Reformation, which was penned by Martin Luther, who nailed his thesis onto the door of a church in Germany. And one of these, I think it was around about 100 theses, involved actual sleeping around. It referred to it as really fleshly indulgence. If you weren't married, you could sleep around, you could do what you want. You could have relationships before marriage and so on. You could drink, you could fornicate as long as you repented and so on. Now that's exactly what's going on in today's Protestant churches, and it's only because these reformists come out partly from the system of worship that they were involved in before, and yet they were still caught in what was called indulgences, and they sinned. Now any movement or anything to do with Jesus Christ, the true Messiah, that actually excuses sin, tries to justify sin, is not of God, it's of Satan the devil. Because remember what the prophet said to Israel. Israel must have done something like this before God judged Israel, and then of course kicked Judah out of the land as well. And it's a very, very similar, or in fact probably the same thing that's happening today. You know, unless you legally go, listen to whatever leader is there, and you do exactly what they say when they tell you, then they say you're not saved, and that is utter tosh. It's nonsense. It's legalism. And that is one of the things that Paul, of course, was talking about. He hated legalism. And the way people assume legalism today is obedience to part of the Torah, which is with regards to fleshly circumcision, and yet their flesh, heart, mind and soul into obeying whatever their church leader says, even if it goes against the 10 Commandments. Okay? And one of these commandments, remember, are the Sabbath. The first commandment is about teaching the true name of the true God. And that's why most or all of the Christian church today falls under the same condemnation as the mother of harlots, the Catholic Church, because of course they still practice their witchcraft. They still are very much involved in sodomizing young boys and children and so on. They get away with it. Just the same as today there are many of these tares. Okay, there are many of these people in churches ruling these places whereby they just go along the same laws and commands as the harlot church. Okay, in the Bible it talks about a harlot and the mother of harlots. So obviously the mother's got to have daughters, and the daughters are the ones I've just described, the Protestant denominations that practice legalism, fornication, witchcraft, and tell you it's alright to sin, as was written in the first thesis, written by Martin Luther, which was not a proper Reformation. It was a part Reformation, but the other part is that we got to come out of the system fully. And that's what God, what Yahweh is calling His people out from today. Now, obviously, I commend you to come out of it. I hope you hear this video. Obviously, it's an important video. I've just explained many different points on there, which are spiritually related, without going into a great deal of the people involved. I think it speaks for themselves. You know, once a person is part of a system, then they will bear the fruit of that system. Okay, so you need to come out from it to start bearing the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Okay, and for the Holy Spirit to remain in you, you must bear the fruits that Yahweh requires of you, or He will cut you off, because judgment starts at the house of God. May Yahweh bless you.